The Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return, sponsored by Narconon Ojai.
Hello, and welcome to the Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return. My name is Joni Siegel. I'm the host for this podcast. Today's episode is episode number 211. We are in our fifth year of podcasting, and we hope that we have given you some particle of hope and let you know that help is available, because that's our purpose. You know, when a person is addicted to drugs and or alcohol, the myriad of choices of treatment can be overwhelming. Narconon Ojai is a residential treatment facility that addresses the physical, mental, and spiritual aspects of addiction with a proven, holistic, drug-free, evidence-based, step-by-step program to free those trapped by addiction. For more information, call 1-866-231-5924. It's an anonymous call. They're there to help you. So give them a call, 1-866-231-5924. Today we have an interview with a gentleman named Mark Owens. At 12, Mark started smoking pot. At 17, he started shooting coke and heroin. By the time he was 25, he had been to prison twice and arrested countless times. This chapter of his life ended when he was arrested for a bank robbery and dozens of other robberies in Maryland. Today, Mark is an active real estate investor in the Baltimore, Maryland area, and he's been doing that for the last 15 years. He's married to his high school sweetheart, and he is the owner of a thriving real estate investment company. He loves inspiring others to live their best lives by sharing his story of how he came from being a homeless junkie to living a life beyond his wildest dreams. Let's talk to Mark Owens.
Okay.
Mark Owens, thank you so much for being willing to be on the podcast today and share your story.
Joni, I really appreciate it. I appreciate you providing me with the opportunity to share my story in hopes that, I'm able to inspire some people to make some positive changes in their life. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's truly our pleasure. And I will just say right up here up front, I believe you said you are 30 plus years clean and sober. And I'm just going to start right off saying, very well done, you.
It's 30, it'll be 31 years in April.
Yep. Very well done. What day in April?
I was in jail, so it's kind of hard
to
remember. It was either April 20th or 22nd of 1990.
Okay. My birthday's the 17th. That's just why I was asking.
Well,
I thought if it was my birthday.
So.
Okay. Anyway, take us back to the beginning and tell our listeners how you got started on drugs.
Okay. So I grew up in Baltimore City in a blue collar neighborhood. And it was, I guess 1977. I was about 12 years old the first time I smoked pot. And up until that point, we'd had like drug education in school and all that. And, they tried to scare us with these stories and these pictures, and it worked. For me, I thought, man, I would never do that. It's like, that stuff sounds like it's really like, have a horrible life. And the first chance I had, one of my 12-year-old friends asked me if I wanted to smoke some pot, and I did. And I didn't even hesitate. And that's when I look back at myself and I just think what the hell was wrong with you? I mean, you knew better, but I didn't hesitate. And the reason why was because, and I didn't realize it at the time, and it took me up until really just the recent years to really put it all together, that is, I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be part of the pack. And all of my friends, even at the age of 12 and 13, were smoking pot. And, if you weren't, then you were, kind of an outcast, and, there was something wrong with you. And most kids, were vulnerable at that age, and I didn't want to feel like that. So I just thought, all right, well, I'll go with, nobody pressured me. I mean, it was just, but I had the opportunity, and I thought, well, this is my chance to fit in. I wasn't great in sports. I wasn't a great student. And so I didn't have any other clicks. And so when this opportunity presented itself, I was just right in.
I'm going to interrupt just for a second, but it is such a horrible thing at 12 years old to be different in any way, to
Right.
be different. And I can see exactly how that would have occurred to you. I mean, yeah, you don't want to be different. You want to fit in. And who doesn't want to fit in? I mean, come on. We all want friends. We all want a group. We all want something. So I get it.
Yeah. So that's the way it started. And then shortly thereafter, we ended up moving from Baltimore City to Baltimore County, which is an adjoining jurisdiction. It's just more, at the time, it was more rural. Instead of like, row houses, we had townhouses, which to me is the same thing, but there was a lot more open space and stuff like that. And we moved out there for better schools. And because my parents knew I was like starting to screw up. And
Mm.
and so once we got out there, then I think I started smoking cigarettes when I was 12 too. I might have started smoking cigarettes before I started smoking pot.
Hmm.
And and then I started drinking. I was probably maybe 12, 13 years old, and I started drinking. And then it's just like so many other stories. And then other opportunities to try different drugs come up. Whether it was back then it was Valiums and Quaaludes and speed, and then eventually mushrooms and acid, inhalants, like anything that contained toluol or toluene, like spray paints and things like that were really terrible for you. But at the time, you think you're going to live forever, so you're not even really thinking about consequences to anything. And then
So you
eventually,
were sniffing spray paint. I think you're
oh
the
yeah,
first one that's talked about that on the podcast. And
oh yeah, yeah.
interesting.
I mean, people think that it's like, why would you do that? The truth is, it's far more powerful than LSD is. I mean, like, I remember at one point, like, I was sitting next to my best friend doing it, and for some reason, I thought he was a cop, and I asked him, I said, "Are you a cop?" And he said, "Yeah," and I punched him in the mouth. we started. We started rolling around in the mud, and after like a couple minutes, we're like kind of coming out of this dream that we're in. And he realized he's not a cop, and I realize he's actually my best friend. And but it gets you that like out there where you literally, you're seeing things that really aren't there, and anything from leaves detaching from trees and floating off to, it's crazy. So that's why people do it. And and then eventually, I guess I was about 17 years old. I was over at the same guy's house, and I saw his older brother in the basement doing a shot of something. And I said, "Man, Steve, what is that?" And he says, "It's Coke." I was like, "Well, how much is it?" And he said, "It's $25 for a quarter gram." So I'm thinking, I got $25. I said, "Can I try it?" And then that was it. My friend tried to talk me out of it. And I thought, yeah, I'm good. I'll quit before it gets that bad. And
Famous last words.
yeah, I know it. And all those years I wanted to be like everybody else, and it turned out I was like everybody else that was an addict, and I just didn't realize it at the time. And so I started shooting coke at the age of 17, and I think right around my 18th birthday, I tried heroin for the first time.
Wow.
And that, there was a lot that happened between 12 and 18. I failed the 10th grade. Uh, I wound up in a serious car accident where my parents asked me to go into like a psychiatric unit for adolescents for drug stuff. And I agreed under the condition that they would take me out if I wanted to leave. And they agreed. And after a few months in there, I attempted to escape. They wouldn't let me out. I told them, I said, "I want to leave." And they said, "No, we're not taking you out." And I was okay. I'm a little defiant. And I attempted to escape. I assaulted one of the doctors, and then my parents just said, "Okay, we're going to get you out." Yeah, because I told them, I was like, "Look, I'm coming out one way or another. So you either bring me out and fulfill your promise to me, or I'm just going to bust out and do what I feel like doing." And it was a terrible position to put them in, but in my 15, 16-year-old brain, where I think I know everything, it seemed like the right decision for me to make.
Just out of curiosity, Mark, did they give you like prescription meds while you were in there?
No, I
No.
wasn't.
Okay.
I didn't have any back then. This is like 1980.
Okay.
We didn't have the same understanding of addiction that we have now. So back then it was just completely different, and they didn't have the understanding. I think they've come so far in their understanding of what it is. It's not, I mean, some people, of course, they have some type of psychological issues,
Right.
and they have addiction issues. I didn't have the psychological issues, I just had the addiction issues, which resulted in a lot of trouble. But I didn't have anything that required help other than getting off the drugs and alcohol. As soon as that happened, my life turned into something completely different.
Right. Okay, so your parents finally came and got you.
Yes.
Next.
And then I got back to my neighborhood and went back to high school. And I went to summer school for 2 years in a row. And I was in night school while I was in my senior year. I was trying to catch up so I could actually graduate on time since I failed the 10th grade. And during that time, now we'll come back to this story, but I found out that this girl in high school, somebody told me she liked me, and it's a girl that I'd had a crush on for years. And I just couldn't believe it. I'm like, I'm such a loser. Like, there's no way that she likes me. What I didn't know is that she didn't know how much of a loser I was. It's like, so we ended up dating, and for maybe 3 or 4 months. And I reached a point where I knew, like, I just reached the point where I knew, like, I'm going to go to jail, or I'm going to OD, or I'm going to get shot. Like, something bad is going to happen. And she is going to go to college and have a career and have a good life. And I can't take her with me, and I can't go with her. So I broke up with her, and I still feel really terrible about it when I go back and talk about it. But I broke up with her, and I just made up some excuse. I heard that, I think I told her that I heard she was like, gonna cheat on me or something like that. Just some BS excuse. Because the truth was, at the time, I realized that, but I realized what the real reason was, but I wasn't able to verbalize it. Like, my brain, like, I could see all the pieces, but I couldn't put them together well enough to express it.
Right.
And so I just reacted by my feelings and just made up some excuse to break up. And that story does turn out to have a good ending. But so we broke up, and that was in the 11th grade. And then in my senior year, November of my senior year, I got kicked out of high school for, this was the issue. It's like, I was always cutting class. I was going out, breaking into houses, stealing cars, getting high, drinking, whatever I could get my hands on. And the assistant principal called me down to the office and told me that if I cut one more class, he's going to, kick me out of school with a recommendation for expulsion. And then he gave me my pass back to class, and I walked right out the front door. That was me. It was just like, daring him. And my parents wouldn't let me quit. And I just thought, okay, well, if you're not going to let me quit, then they're going to have to kick me out. And that was it. So I went home, packed my stuff, and then left the note on my kitchen table to my parents' house where I was living. And then I moved back in with my grandmother that lived back in the neighborhood where I grew up, back where the drugs were harder. And that's when things really got out of control, because I had how do I put this? There were no rules. Like, I could pretty much do what I wanted to do. And so there was no structure. And I tried to get my stuff together. I mean, at that age, I got my GED. Like, maybe 4 or 5 months after I got kicked out of school, I went and took the GED test, because I thought, I do want to have a diploma. And I'm not going to remember any more 3 years from now than I remember right now. So I better hurry up and go take the damn test while I still remember this stuff. I passed the GED test, and I tried to, like, get jobs that I couldn't hold down. And at the time, this was like 1982, 83. There was a recession going on. And of course, when you're 17, 18 years old, you don't know what a recession is. And
Right.
so there weren't really any good jobs. So I'd, work at a gas station, or, just stuff like that, minimum wage with no future. And it wouldn't have mattered where I worked anyway, because as soon as I got paid, I'd be running out and doing my thing. And so it progressed from that point. I guess around the age of 18, I started to realize that, man, it's like every time I ever got in trouble, there was drugs or alcohol involved, like every time. And it used to be, the thinking used to be that the drugs and alcohol was a symptom of the problem. And I came to realize that well, the drug and alcohol is the causes of my problems. And that's like, whether I'm kicked out of high school or losing jobs or stealing from people or lying or getting arrested again, it was always drugs and alcohol that were the issue. And so I guess I was maybe 19 or 20, and I had my first apartment, and I was sitting down at the kitchen table and I was working out my budget. I think I made like $200 a week at the time. That's working 40 hours a week. And I noticed back then a case of Budweiser was $10 a case. I was drinking a case of beer a day, and I weighed like 130 pounds.
Wow.
And I would get off work. I would go buy a case of beer. I would drink usually about 3 6-packs before I went to bed. And then the next morning I would wake up and drink, one or two before I went to work. I would come home from lunch because I'd worked literally a block away, and I would drink one or two when I came back for lunch. And I would come home, I would drink one or two, and then I'd go buy another case of beer. And so when my budget, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, okay, $200 minus 70 for beer. And that was the first thing on my list. And that's when, and then it was like, rent is at the bottom, just, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking at this, and that's when I really started to realize like, man, you do have a problem. I mean, like if you're putting alcohol in front of your rent, like that doesn't make any sense. And like, that's not the way that people that aren't alcoholics or drug addicts, like that's not the way they think. And
were you still doing drugs at the time or just primarily beer?
yeah,
Oh yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was doing them, I was selling them, I was, doing whatever it took. And and it, to me at the time, and this was, I wasn't the product of my environment. I mean, I created my environment. You can always make choices, and I chose to associate with the people that were on the same path that I was. So to me, it seemed normal. It's like everybody shoots coke, everybody does heroin, all the girls are out on the corners. It's like that's just what we do. And that's when I first started to realize, like, really, like, man, there's, I got an issue. And it was shortly after that I got caught stealing at a gas station I worked at. And the owner called me in and he sat me down, and I'd stole $100 2 weeks in a row. And I bought heroin. I had my heroin dealer brought the heroin to the gas station. I got high while I was working. And he caught me stealing, and he brought me in and he said, listen, I know you got a drug problem. I'm going to give you a choice. He says, you can either go to some NA meetings or you can go to jail. So I picked NA, and I'd never even heard of it. I didn't even know what it was. And so I went to an NA meeting, and he didn't press charges or anything. Obviously I was fired, but I did go to an NA meeting. It's probably, if it wasn't that night, it was the next night. And so I'm listening to the person up at the front of the room telling their story. And the guy was talking about how he was shooting heroin in his neck, and sometimes he couldn't find a vein. And I remember listening to that thinking, man, that guy's got a problem. I'm not that bad. I don't shoot in my neck. I shoot it in my arm.
Right. And, right. I'm not shooting it between my toes. I'm just shooting it in my arm.
Exactly. And so, I mean, now I realize how, like, comical that is and ridiculous. But at the time when you're in the middle of the addiction, like, what makes sense to me now was completely opposite back then. And so I kind of compared myself out. And then over the next couple of years, I went to, a drug rehab. It was at Shepherd Pratt. It was a 60-day program. And it was mostly to just kind of, drug addicts were really good at this. Like, we'll do anything it takes to get out of trouble without any real intention of changing our lives. Just we want to get out of this jam that we're in, and then we can get back to doing our thing. And so I went into this drug rehab kind of with that intention. And then after that, when my parents asked me to go to, like, I think it was a 90-day program, might have been 6 months. And it was more like a 3/4 way house where you were in there most of the time, but you would go off site to go to meetings, and you could work your way up to where you could drive like the house vehicle to meetings and stuff like that. So I agreed I would go there, and I thought, I got nothing to lose. It's like, I have a place to sleep and some food to eat. It's because I didn't have any other friends. That all my other friends were drug addicts that were still active. So I didn't have anything to go back to. So I thought, I'll try this. And after a month, I had driving privileges where I could like drive to a meeting. And I took the car, and instead of driving to a meeting, I looked at the guy that I was with and I said, man, you want to go to the York Mall and hang out? And I'm thinking like, I want to go talk to some girls walking around the mall. And he agreed, and we went to the mall, and I ended up meeting a girl and getting her phone number, and he didn't. And the next day he told on me, and then I got kicked out of that. And that was tough. Like my parents had to come pick me up, but it's like, Jesus Christ, you're kicked out of it. How do you get kicked out of a 3/4 way house? And I was just so used to, like being a fuck up that it just, to me, it wasn't anything unusual about it at all. It's just like, hey, I want to go talk to some girls. I got the car. I'm just going to go to the mall instead of the NA meeting. And who wants to go talk to a bunch of girls in NA anyway? They're just as fucked up as I am. It's like, I want to go some, people that are a little bit smarter than me. And that was my thinking back then. And, eventually things got, it was bad then, but it got actually worse. I got stuck in California. So things got really bad. And my parents asked me to check into a detox. And I thought, yeah, things are really bad. I need to check into a detox. So they called the Shepherd Pratt, where I was at for my 60-day program. They're like, look, we don't have any empty beds. He can check into one of the state hospitals, and they can help him out. So I went to, I think it was Springfield State Hospital, which was, I don't even think they have them anymore, but it was like a state-run mental hospital. And I get in there and I check in, and I realized pretty quick that, man, this is like a psychiatric unit. This isn't like, these people aren't like me. These people are like, these people are crazy. I'm normal. And so, like the next day I went up and I told the lady at the desk, I was like, listen, I got to go. I don't belong here. I got to leave. And she says, well, you have to give 72 hours notice. I'm like, okay, well, you got my notice. And then they came in the next day and they said, we're not going to release you. We're going to seek commitment for being homicidal and suicidal. And I was like,
where'd they get that idea from?
I was wondering the same thing, because I hadn't even talked to anybody. I wasn't talking to anybody. So I went in to the, finally get my doctor's appointment. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you don't even know me. Like, nobody's even asked me why I'm here. And you're diagnosing me with like no information at all. He's like, well, we have to, wait it out and see, just all this mumbo jumbo crap. And I called my mother up, and she wasn't an intentional enabler, but I guess she was in a sense. Maybe she was saving me from myself even by enabling me, because I told her, I was like, well, you got to get me out of here, because if you don't, I'm going over the fence. I don't care if they shoot me, I'm getting out of here. And she knew from my past that I wasn't, I don't bluff. That's, if I say that's what I'm going to do, that's what I'm going to do. And so she called Shepherd Pratt, and they agreed to take me back short term if I agreed that I would check into a long-term facility. And I said, sure. I would have said anything to get out. So I go to Taylor Manor, or to Shepherd Pratt, and they tell me about this place. I think it was called Tuam Est, and that was in California, on the beach in Venice, California, like literally a drug rehab on the boardwalk. And it was just crazy. So who wouldn't say yes to that, right? It's like,
yeah,
good. And and then I got there, and this is how small the world is. So they want to give you somebody that wants to. They have somebody that's going to stay like within arm's length of you for like the first 4 or 5 days that you're there. So they assigned this guy to me, and he comes in the room, and I knew him from the drug rehab in Maryland. Like, I knew him. And so they thought that would be a good fit, because we were familiar with each other. So it was the second day I was there, and I looked at him and I said, Bill, man, I feel like leaving. And I was half hoping he would talk me into staying, like give me all these great reasons to stay. And he said, all right, man, let's go.
Oh no.
And that was it. And we grabbed their stuff and walked out the front door. And then, we lived on the streets in West Hollywood for, I guess, 3 or 4 weeks. and like, sleeping in abandoned houses and, eating dinner at, homeless shelters and churches and stealing, just
Wow.
and we were getting high. I mean, that's the first place I ever shot crystal meth. I'd never done it before. I hated it once I did it. I thought it was coke, and it wasn't. And I was like awake for like 24 hours. Like, I drank 10 pots of espresso. I hated it. And but that's, we were stuck out there, and finally my parents agreed to, send me a plane ticket. And so I flew back home. Bill got back home, and then he calls me up like a month later, and he was back in California. I was like, what the hell are you doing? He's like, I stole a credit card. I'm out here. I got a rental car. I got a hotel. You want to come out?
You said no, right?
I said, sure. And it was the dumbest damn thing, because I said, listen, I want a round trip ticket. Like, don't give me a one way. So I get to the airport and there's a one way ticket. So I flew out, and we were partying with the same homeless people we were with before, except now we got a rental car and,
And a credit card.
and a credit card. And after a week, we ended up losing the credit card. They took it from us at a liquor store. Then we sold the rental car and to some drug dealers.
Sold the rental car. Oh no. Okay.
And then there's a valuable lesson coming up. Something that I learned that has stuck with me for years. So I actually missed a court date, and I don't remember what it was for. It was either for assault or it might have been breaking and entering. I don't remember. I think it was for assault, and I missed the court date. So now I've got a failure to appear.
In Maryland, right?
Yes, in Maryland.
Yeah. And you're in California.
Yes. And with no money, no credit card, no car. And my parents, I'm sure that I'm not going to call them up and say, hey, I need a plane ticket. So Bill said.
Okay, what happened to your return ticket?
We never got it.
Oh.
It was like, we'll get it. We never got it.
I see.
And so, and I don't know whatever happened to Bill. I never saw him again. I never talked to him again. We were in the motel room, and he was, he told me he was going to kill himself. And I didn't know if he was serious or not. I didn't want to stick around to find out. And I didn't want to see it. I couldn't blame him if he did. I mean, the way I felt about myself and my life, it's like, oh, that's one way out. And so I left, and I don't know whatever happened to him. We didn't have any mutual friends, like back in Maryland or anything like that. So I don't know what happened. And he's got his first and last name are very common. So even if I like go look for him on Facebook, there's like a million of them.
Right.
And he might not want to hear from me anyway. I mean, he, as far as I know, he's a doctor now. I'm very successful, and he sees my name and he just thinks, uh-oh. So what happened was I decided I'm going to hitchhike home. Had no money. And I got on, I can't remember the names of all the roads, but I think it was 101, and I took that down to 5, and I took 5 over to Route 95, which runs along the California-Arizona border. And I took that up to 40. And 40 goes all the way across the country. And I remember walking up to this exit, and here's a funny thing. People help hitchhikers. People don't hitchhike that much anymore, but I mean, people like this one guy, I'm in the middle of the desert. He gave me a gallon of water and $20. And I get to Needles, California, and I took the $20 and went and got something to eat, a pack of cigarettes. And then I walk up to this ramp that goes on to 40. And there was a guy sitting underneath of a tree. And he said, man, this place sucks. I've been here for 2 days trying to get a ride. I'm still sitting here. And that kind of scared me a little bit. It's like my money's going to run out. I don't feel like living on this ramp for the rest of my life. Like something's got to happen. And so what I decided, and I remember this as clear as if it happened yesterday. I thought, okay, well, I want to go to the East Coast, and I'm not going to get there sitting on my ass underneath of a tree. I'm going to start walking down this ramp. I'm going to put my thumb out. And if people pick me up, great. And if they don't, well, this time tomorrow, I'll be 25 miles closer to home. And I just started walking. I probably walked maybe 150 yards. And it was like the first or second vehicle that passed me pulled over. And it was a red pickup truck with an older couple in it. And they said, where are you going? And I said, I'm going to Baltimore. And they're like, well, we can get you to Kingman, Arizona, which was maybe 30 miles away or something. I said, man, that's great. Like, that'll work. And I hurried up and jumped in the truck. I didn't want that guy underneath the tree, like running up. Because I just thought, man, that guy's like, he's bad luck. Like, I mean, I got it bad, but he's really got it bad. And I don't need that. So I jumped in, and I remember like him and I like just staring at each other as the truck drove away. and the valuable lesson that I learned is that if you want something, if you want to accomplish some kind of goal, whatever it is, like, you have to start working towards it. And if you're working towards that goal, whatever it is, it's more than likely more than likely going to get help from other people that want to help you reach that goal. If you're just sitting on your ass underneath a tree doing a half-ass job, sticking your thumb out, you're not showing a lot of motivation or ambition, and people are going to be less likely to help you. They see me walking down the ramp, full speed, thumb out. They're like, man, that guy's on a mission. He's trying to get somewhere. Let's help him.
You are listening to the Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return. For more information on the podcast, or to reach out if you have a story you would like to share with us, go to our Facebook page by the same name, or you can email us at theaddictionpodcast@yahoo.com, or go to our website, theaddictionpodcast.com, or call us at 727-314-7080. And please remember to subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and give us a 5-star review. For more information on our sponsor, Narconon Ojai, visit their website at narcononojai.org. That's NARCONONOJAI.org. Or call 1-866-231-5924. That's 1-866-231-5924. Sometimes, the hardest thing about getting someone into recovery is getting them to agree to treatment. Bobby Newman, a certified drug counselor with 30 years experience and an over 85% success rate as an interventionist, has created a series of 12 videos that you can use right now to learn every step to get your loved one to agree to treatment. Call 1-833-918-0008 today and say the word podcast to get a 10% discount. Or go to newmaninterventions.com and type in the word podcast for a 10% discount. This service comes with a free 1-hour consultation with Bobby.
And
now, Mark, I have to stop you just for a second. So are you doing drugs while you're doing this, or is this kind of your rehab kind of, sort of?
No, I was doing drugs.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
Maybe not that particular day because I didn't have the money or access to them. But I mean, there were some days where I didn't do drugs, but it was either, lack of money or lack of access.
Got it.
I mean, I just walked out of a drug rehab and spent 3 weeks living in the street and, doing whatever drugs I could get my hands on. So, and for this time, I was there on a hot credit card and was, living the same life. But what I learned from that was that, it's like you got to work towards your goals. And I didn't even realize that at the time. It wasn't until later on in my life that I looked back on that and I saw the power of that. Like, man, you got to work towards your goals and let people see that you're really trying to accomplish this, and you're going to get more help than if you don't do anything at all. And so another thing that happened during that trip was so I'm in Kingman, Arizona, and it's a truck stop that I got dropped off at. I just walked up to truckers and I said, hey, listen, man, I need a ride east. Are you heading east? I said, look, I'm clean. I got money. It's like, because there's a lot of nasty people that are hitchhiking. And I think like the first or second one I asked, he said, sure, I'm heading out to Gary, Indiana. It's like, all right, that's halfway home. And he told me during the time, I was telling him I was interested in just kind of traveling around the country, just like being a drifter. And because I really didn't have any direction. I wasn't going to college or anything. I wasn't learning any trades. I just thought, like, I'll go be a carny or something. I just want to travel around the country and just see stuff and meet people. And he told me to get a job on a horse farm. He said, get a job on a horse farm. You learn how to work with horses. You can go anywhere in the country, get a job. They pay cash, and they'll usually give you an apartment. So I thought, all right, well, I'm a city boy, but I mean, horses, they can't be that hard, figure something out. So I eventually got home to Baltimore. People don't even believe this, but I have no reason to lie. I hitchhiked from LA to Baltimore City in 4 days. People don't believe it, but it's like I didn't stop. I mean, it's like, this trucker goes, and then I got to ride from another guy from there to downtown Baltimore, and we stopped one night. And other than that, I was awake and moving the whole time. We did it. I did it in 4 days. A few days after I got home, we used to have these things called the yellow pages. I don't think the younger people know about those things now. But I got out the yellow pages, and I did what I always do when I'm looking for a job. I turned to horses, and I started, or stables or something like that, and I just started calling the phone numbers, asking if they were hiring. And one of these horse farms said, "Yeah, we are hiring. Do you have any experience?" "No." "All right, well, we got something for you." So I went out there, and it was just, I was mucking stalls. They'd say, "Look, come in, the horses poop, you clean it up, you fill their water bucket, you feed them." Like, I can do that. And they gave me an apartment, and they paid me cash. That served me really well for a few months till I ended up getting fired. I One of my days off, I went and broke into a store, into a building, to steal money to buy drugs, and I got caught and ended up going to prison for 10 months. And a condition of my probation was that I had to get a long-term drug treatment when I got out. I was like, oh man, again? Like, I just tried this stuff. And so I get out of jail, and I ended up in Alexandria, Virginia. I think it was called Second Genesis was the name of the rehab. And I thought, okay, well, I got to do this. So I stayed there for 4 months. And then one night I just said, I can't do this anymore. I have to get out. And I think it was like December 20th. And I just walked out the front door, and I ended up going out, and I got high and committed some crimes. And the next morning, after I sobered up, I'm like, man, I got to get back to that rehab. I just violated my probation. I don't want to go to prison for another 4 years. So I went back, and then they kicked me out. And so I'm out in the street. It's December 20th, 21st, something like that. And it's cold. I've got $8 in my pocket and a suitcase. And my choice is either go back home to Baltimore and go to prison, or go somewhere else. And I thought, well, if I'm going to be homeless, if I'm going to live on the street, I want to go somewhere where at least it's warm. And so I started hitchhiking to Florida. And it took me almost as long to get to Florida as it did to get from California to Baltimore. I think it took like 3 days. And that included like sleeping under bridges on 95, and it's terrible. And I got to Jacksonville, Florida. And as far as I'm concerned, that's Florida. And what I came to find is that's actually like the home for the homeless in Florida, because so many people like me decide they want to go there. And then that's the first big city they hit, and they just say, okay, I'm stopping right here. And there's a huge homeless population. And I got a job. I don't know if I don't want to bore you too much, but I was living under a bridge. I was literally sleeping underneath a bridge and looking for a job. And I thought, well, I got to eat. And this is where, like, drug addicts, we're really good at solving problems, because we create a lot of problems that need to be solved. And so we're really good at that. And so I'm thinking to myself, all right, well, I got to get a job, but I'm not going to get paid for a couple of weeks. How am I going to eat if I'm at work all day? I can't go to, shelters and missions and churches because I'm going to be working. So I got this bright idea. I was like, man, I'll work at a place that sells food, and then I can eat while I'm at work. So I got a job working at a hot dog stand. There was a place called Jacksonville Landing, which was like a touristy type thing on I think it was like the St. Johns River or something. It was beautiful. And I got a job working in a hot dog place, and ended up
all the hot dogs you can eat.
And I don't want to say, but I was a hot dog eating mofo. It's like, that's like all they sold. And that was, I'm hungry, I'm going to eat them. And the issue is they sold beer. So, what goes better with a hot dog than a beer? And as it turns out, one of the homeless guys that I'd met told me about a mailman that rented rooms to people like us. Well, it turns out the mailman was a crackhead, and everybody else that was in the house was. It was like a house full of crackheads. And I'm trying to get myself together. Like, I really am. It doesn't look like it, but I'm like, I got to figure this out. I can't. And then here I am. I'm living, with a crackhead mailman and all of his homeless friends. And I realized that I got to go further south. Like, I can't stay in Jacksonville. I got to get out of here. And I did another stupid thing, another of my many stupid things. I wrote a note to the owner of the hot dog stand and said, look, I've worked, I don't remember, 60 hours times $4 an hour minus tax. You owe me about $200. And I took it out of the register and I gave one of the ladies that worked there the note to give to the owner. And then I left. And I was on my way to a train station, or the bus station. I was going to see if I could get a bus to Ocala, Florida, because it's supposed to be horse country. And I thought I can go there and get a job. And halfway to the bus station, the police pulled up, jumped out with the guns out and arrested me for strong arm robbery. The ladies that worked there emptied the register and then said that I threatened them and stole everything.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's what I said. Didn't they show you the note?
I guess not.
No,
hey, here's a patsy right here. We can make him take the fall.
Exactly. And so I got locked up, and then, but it got to court, trial like 60 days later, and all the stories were unraveling with the people that I supposedly robbed, and they ended up reducing it to theft, and they let me go. And I was, so here I am, homeless again, and I called my grandmother up, and she wired me a couple $100, and I thought, okay, well, I can use this to get to Ocala, but I can also like get high before I leave. And I'm just, I was walking, I don't know where I was at, but I was somewhere in Jacksonville, and I started talking to some, one of the working girls on the street, just talking to her, and she's like, well, you can stay where I'm at. She's renting an apartment. So I went and stayed in her apartment, and she would go out and do her thing and bring the drugs back. And it was pretty good. I'm just sitting here doing nothing, and she's working. I'm getting high. It's working pretty good. And then, things started to get bad where she, one of the guys that we were friends with, like he just got one of his eyes stabbed out. Yeah, I know. And I'm just, you're trying to keep a straight face when somebody says that, but it's like, inside you're thinking like, man, I got to get out of here. And then she came in one day and said that she was just sexually assaulted in like an alley. And then she says, but they didn't get my rock, and she pulled it out of her bra. And I was like thinking like, this is insanity. Like she was just had something horrible happen to her. All she cares about is her $10 rock. This guy lost one of his eyes, but he's thinking, well, he's still got one eye. And I'm just like, I got to get out of here. And I started hitchhiking. I didn't have any money. So I just said, well, I'm going to hitchhike south and just go down where it's, warmer, because Jacksonville really wasn't that warm. And again, I'm thinking if I'm going to live on the street, I at least want to be somewhere where it's, like I can sleep outside without like shivering. And so I hitchhiked south, and I got to Palm Beach. And I thought, man, I wonder if there's any horse farms around here. There's got to be some horse things around here. And I looked in the yellow pages, and I found a tackle shop. It sells horse tackle. And I went to the tackle shop, and I asked them, and they said, there's a horse show right down the street. You can go there. They might have somebody, that's looking for help. So I walked and hitchhiked to the horse show, and I walked up to the gate, and there was a guy standing there, and he said, well, do you have any experience? And I said, well, I used to work at a horse farm in Maryland. And he said, well, where'd you work? And I said, I worked for a guy named Harry Binkley at Woodgate Farm. And he's like, I know Harry. I've known Harry for years. So this guy ended up hiring me, it's the funniest damn thing, but I'm doing like security work at horse shows. And it involved like walking around in the middle of the night from like 8 p.m. till 6 a.m. If the horses got out, you go catch them. If they rolled over on their backs or their sides and they couldn't stand up because the walls were in the way, you got to go back in and flip them back over, and you just keep an eye on the trailers to make sure nobody's breaking into anything. And I got a trailer to live in that I towed it behind a pickup truck that he owned, and he paid me cash. And so here I am driving, from Florida to, I think as far north as Vermont for these horse shows. I got a warrant for my arrest. I got a suspended driver's license. And but I'm just thinking, well, this is normal, this is just what people do.
Life is good.
Yeah. As I'm eating and I'm getting high. So life's pretty good.
Well, what made you want to change all that?
I'll get to that.
Okay.
So I ended up at it was in near King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. There was a horse show, and I was parked in this giant parking lot next to a Burger King. And I was going to the Burger King eating like every day, and I started talking to one of the girls who was working there, and then she ended up coming over to my camper, and we hit it off like really well, like really really well. And I ended up coming down to see her in Norristown. When I had like weekends off, I would hitchhike down or take a bus down to uh, spend the weekend with her. And then ended up, I got down there one weekend, and she was doing really bad. She was getting kicked out of where she was staying at. She didn't have anywhere to go. And I was sitting in a bar talking. Of course, I'm sitting in a bar, and I'm talking to the bartender, and she says, "Well, the owner of this place, he's got an apartment on the second floor for rent. It was like $65 a week." And I was like, "Well, I've had a bunch of money." I said, "Okay, well, I want to get that. I want to. Here's a security deposit. I think I paid 4 weeks rent in advance." And I went and gave Dana the keys and said, "Here, I got you an apartment. I can't live with you. I got to go back to work, but at least you got a place to stay for the next month." And then I ended up coming back and I got fired from that job, and then came back and moved in with her, and her and I got together. And I tried to get it. I tried to get myself together, and I was working a full-time job. I was working a part-time job Friday and Saturday nights at a gas station. I was really like trying. I wasn't going to. I'd been to AA, I'd been to NA, I'd been to rehabs. I tried churches, and I thought, well, maybe a girl that's not a drug addict in a different state, like maybe that's the magic formula for me, the secret recipe.
How old were you then, Mark?
I was about maybe 23,
Okay.
and so it was 1988, so I was 23. It was June 1st of '88 that I met her, and so what happened was I was trying, I was really trying, and I couldn't sustain it. I kept going back and doing coke, and ended up fucking up. I'm trying to remember the order of events because a lot happened in a short period of time. It wound up where I ended up robbing a store. It was the gas station I actually worked at, and got locked up. After 60 days, I got out on bail, and then her and I got back together, and it was just a couple months after that this is when things like I started to reach a turning point where I got another job, spent all the money on the rent money on drugs, and I had decided that I've got to make a choice here. And so the choice I made was to go rob a bank. That was my choice. And so I robbed the bank. Didn't get a lot of money, but I got enough for the rent. And came home, and then had some money in the kitchen. She didn't know what I did. She didn't know I robbed the bank. I just gave her money for the rent, and she didn't. I don't even know if she asked where I got it. And the next morning, a sheriff or a sheriff's deputy and a bail bondsman came to our apartment, and they were going to revoke my bail because apparently one of my girlfriend's friends told them that I was going to skip town. And so I was like, I was cocky, I was arrogant, I was smart, I was all the, just all that crap. And it was early in the morning when they came knocking on the door, and I remember like looking at Dana, and I'm just like, I'm very polite to the sheriff, like, okay, no problem. Can I get dressed? I was literally in bed. I'm being very compliant, and I'm looking at her, and I'm dressing to run. Like I'm just like I winked at her, and I'm just like I'm tying my shoes tight and tucking my laces in, and I'm ready to run. And I asked the sheriff, I was like, "Can I call my grandma and just let her know what's going on? Because she's the one that put the money up. I don't want her worrying about me." So he agreed, and I'm standing in the kitchen on the phone, and the sheriff was standing by the entrance to the kitchen that led to the hallway where there's a door that left the apartment, and the bail bondsman was up against the other door in the kitchen that led out to the fire escape. And I'm just pretending I'm on the phone. I'm not even talking to anybody. And I'm just thinking, I'm just looking at my options like, okay, which one do I punch, or like, what do I do to get out of this? And then it happened. The sheriff told me to get off the phone. I said, just a minute. He said, get off the phone. I said, just a minute. He came around behind me, and he grabbed my hand while I was on the phone, and I spun around and picked him up and threw him over the kitchen table, and turned around and down the hall, out the door, down the steps. out into the street, and I ended up. There's a river called the Schuylkill River with like a little running trail and stuff. And I got down there. That's where I used to get high. And so I knew that those trails pretty well. And I ran down the trails, and I wanted to get to the other side of the river. And it's a pretty big river. And there was a bridge that went across the river. And I'm thinking like, man, I can't, that's a long bridge. And I'm sure the police are looking for me. And if I'm on that bridge and they see me, like, I got nowhere to go. I'm not going to jump in the damn river. So I went underneath the bridge. I climbed up on one end of it, and then I just kind of shimmied along the girders underneath the bridge till I got to the other side of it. I mean, we're real good. Like, addicts are really creative with stuff. Like, if we're in a jam,
I'm getting that.
we're
Yeah.
very good at figuring it out. And there is good news to all this. I mean, those life skills that you get, if you can translate those and focus them into doing the right thing, then you can have an amazing life, and and be an amazing, decent person in the process. So, all these things. So I got to the other side of the bridge, and there was actually some train tracks, and there was a freight train, going down. I thought, well, shit, I'm going to jump on that train. I don't know where it's going, but it's away from here. So I'm running as fast as I can along this train, trying to grab onto it. And I was running as fast as I could, and I could barely keep up with it. And I thought, man, if I fall, like I'm going to end up getting my arms cut off or my head cut off or something. So I just stopped running and just like, what am I going to do? And I worked my way back to this little town that was, I think it was called Bluebell. And I'm just walking around thinking like, okay, I got to get out of here. Like, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to steal a car or what am I going to do? And I saw a car pull up in front of a pharmacy, and the guy got out and walked into the pharmacy, and he left his car running. There's my ride. So I went and hopped in the car, took off. And there is a kind of a funny story to this. I'm driving to Baltimore, and I'm going down Route 1. I didn't want to go down like the 95. And I see a kid hitchhiking. So I was like, I've hitchhiked all over the country. Let me pull over and give him a ride. And we're driving, and we're talking. And I said, man, I used to hitchhike a lot. And he's like, oh, did you really? I was like, yeah, I found an easier way. And he says, well, what's the easy way? And I said, steal the car. And he looked at me and he said, really? I was like, yeah, I just stole this one. So, of course, that would have been like a great Facebook face pic, profile pic, that when his jaw dropped and he realized he's in a stolen car. And, I ended up giving him a ride to where he wanted to go, and, dropped him off. And I'm sure he appreciated the ride, and he's probably still telling people the story about it. And then I just head on down the road. It gets worse because it was like the very next day, the feds kicked in our door for the bank robbery. And I had already left. I'd escaped from the sheriff and the bail bonds guy like the day before. And now the feds invaded, kicked in the door. And so I knew I was called. And this was like the last month of my active addiction. I just realized at that point, like, okay, you're done, man. You got your violation of probation, you got a bank robbery, you got this other robbery in Pennsylvania. Like, you're going to be going to jail forever. And so my thoughts were, okay, well, then I went all in. I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to get high until I get shot or OD. Like, that's it. Those are my choices, and I'll see how long I can do it. Maybe it might be today, might be my last day, it might be next week. I don't know, but that's what I'm going to do. And I started robbing stores. And I was, 1, 2, 3 a day. I'd go rob a store, get $500, go buy a bunch of Coke, get a motel room. And I just kept doing that every day. And it was towards the end, after about maybe 3 or 4 weeks of this, there was this giant oil spill in Alaska, the Valdez oil spill, I think it was called. And they were hiring anybody that could come out there to just wipe the oil off the rocks and the ducks and whatever. They're hiring anybody that would come out. So I thought, man, maybe I got to California, like wipe some oil off some ducks, and and nobody's gonna look for me out there. And
California or Alaska?
Alaska.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I was stealing cars like every 3 or 4 days. The way I was, and this is like drug addicts thinking, like, I don't know how to hotwire a car. So I got to get the keys So what I decided to do was I would call pizza delivery places and order a pizza, and I would give them an address to an apartment building in the area. And you do this from payphones. We had payphones back then. And I would sit across the street, and when the pizza guy drove up, they always left their motors running. And so they'd get running in the front door with a pizza, and I'd just jump in the car and take off. And sometimes there was another pizza in the car, so I got a car and a pizza.
I hope somebody listening is a pizza delivery person and they know not to leave their car running when they go deliver.
If I go to like a local gas station or something, and I see their car running, I said, "Man, I used to steal cars like that." And they always look at me, they don't
there you
believe
go.
it. I wouldn't leave my car running. And
you are listening to the Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return. For more information on the podcast, or to reach out if you have a story you would like to share with us, go to our Facebook page by the same name, or you can email us at theaddictionpodcast@yahoo.com, or go to our website, theaddictionpodcast.com, or call us at 727-314-7080. And please remember to subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts and give us a 5-star review. For more information on our sponsor, Narconon Ojai, visit their website at narcononojai.org. That's NARCONONOJAI.org. Or call 1-866-231-5924. That's 1-866-231-5924. Sometimes, the hardest thing about getting someone into recovery is getting them to agree to treatment. Bobby Newman, a certified drug counselor with 30 years' experience and an over 85% success rate as an interventionist, has created a series of 12 videos that you can use right now to learn every step to get your loved one to agree to treatment. Call 1-833-918-0008 today and say the word podcast to get a 10% discount. Or go to newmaninterventions.com and type in the word podcast for a 10% discount. This service comes with a free 1-hour consultation with Bobby. So back to Alaska. You're going to Alaska. You're going to wipe off ducks.
That's what I was thinking. And so it's my last day in Baltimore. And I decide, just one more time, I'm going to go. And this girl I'm going to mention, like today we're friends and she's sober. And she's like, we're best friends. So I call her
I'm
up.
sure you have so much history between the two of you.
Yeah, and she's really like an awesome person. And so I called, I went and saw her and was like, hey, Barb, I'm going to go out and hang out. Let's get a party, rob another store, get a motel. And she said, okay, sounds good. So we did that. And then on the way back to the motel, I ran a red light in a stolen car. A cop saw me. I pulled up to this intersection. It was like 1:00 in the morning. And the cop's right behind me. And the car I stole this time was a 280Z. It was a guy left it running at a gas station. I jumped in and took off. And it was a very fast car. And I'm just thinking, man, if I can I don't know where these cars in front of me came from. What the hell are all these people doing out at 1:00 in the morning? Like, what's wrong with these people? And so I'm thinking, if I get a chance to pass these people, like I'm going to get away because this car is like really fast. And the way that you drive when you're terrified, I'll take risks that the cop won't take.
Right.
And might die in the process, but at the time you don't care. And at that time, 2 other police cars pulled up in front of the 3 cars in front of me. So I had no way around them. And, within 2 seconds, like all the cops jumped out with their guns pointed at the car. And I looked at Barb and I said, give me the drugs. And I thought, like, I'm running. Like, I'm not just going to get out. It's like they can, So I got out and with my hands up. And then I still remember it. It scares me to even think about it. But I just remember, like, I gritted my teeth and I took off running, just thinking if they shoot, if I get shot, just keep fucking running. Like, don't stop running because you're going to go to jail for the rest of your damn life. And I started running, and eventually, within 10 minutes, I got caught. Just like running out of air, and these guys driving around and all, and just, it's like running like your pants are on fire. You can only run for so long like that. I ended up getting caught. And they found the bank bag under the car. This was like from a, like a, not a bank, but from like a, whatever I robbed, gas station or 7-Eleven or whatever it was. And so they knew I robbed something. And they ended up catching Barb. When I got out and started running, all the cops went running after me. And she just opened the door and started walking down the street. Like maybe a half hour, an hour later, they caught her. And they said, listen, I don't know what you did, but we know you did something, and she's going to go down with you. And I said, you know what? I said, this is going to take a while. Get and have a seat, because we're going to be here for a long time. I'm going to tell you everything I've done under this condition. You have to let her go, because she hadn't the damn thing to do with it. She's just out drinking and getting high with me. She wasn't involved in any of this stuff. So they let her go. And I sat down and told them about 25 robberies that I could remember in the last month, and the cars that I stole and everything. And I just thought, I don't want to go to jail and then have a detainer put on me 2 weeks before I get out, because they found out about something else that I did. So I'm just like, I'm getting all this stuff out. And so I ended up going to Baltimore County Detention Center. Even though I got locked up in Baltimore City, the majority of my robberies were in Baltimore County. So they transferred me out to their detention center. And I was there for maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and I attempted to escape out of Baltimore County Detention Center and almost got out. Thank God I didn't. But I was in another inmate cell, and they have bunk beds, and between the bunk beds, there's like a piece of steel that supports them. And I was standing there talking to him, and I noticed that one of them, the top weld was actually cracked. And I'm thinking, like, man, if I got that 3-inch piece of steel, that 3-foot long piece of steel, I could probably get through these windows. And I found a couple other guys that agreed, like, man, yeah, let's try this. And the guy whose cell it was, he didn't want any parts of it. But I'm not a big guy. I'm not a tough guy by any means, but you can say a lot with your eyes. And the look I gave him is like, you don't have any choice. We're taking your shit. There's nothing we can do about it. And we did. We laid down on the bottom bunk and put our feet up on the top one, and we all pushed up as hard as we could, and we broke the top weld, and then bent that thing back and forth and broke the bottom weld. And we went back into my cell, and there was like this real heavy duty like mesh screen. We got that off. Then there was this cast iron grate behind that. We got a hole in that big enough to get out. And the only thing separating us from the street was like a 1/2-inch thick piece of plexiglass. We were prying that off when the COs, the correctional officers, came in, and we're done. So I ended up going on lockup, solitary for they put me on lockup for 6 months. And at the time, I was still like, if I would have did anything to get out. It didn't matter. I didn't want to hurt anybody, but if that's what it took, that's what I would have done. And it was during that time, my parents got me a lawyer, and he comes in to see me, and he looks at me and he says, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, you're already locked up. Can't you even stay out of trouble in jail? And I'm like, I don't know what to say. Like, I guess not. And he says, don't you realize that if you can stay out of trouble, you can be out of here before you're 30 years old, and you'll be young enough, you can start a whole new life. Mm-hmm. And he said that, and I was just like thinking, like, man, I could be, yeah, I mean, it's 5 years. If he can get me out of this in 5 years, and I will be young enough to start a whole new life. And that was the first piece of hope that I had since I was 11 years old. It was like, I can do this. Like, I was, for the first time, excited, even though I'm in jail on lockup, I was excited about the potential to have like a normal life and a respectable life. And so during my time on lockup, I just, I started thinking about myself, and it's like, how I got to where I'm at, my feelings that were involved with it, my circumstances. I accept 100% responsibility for everything that's happened to me. Maybe things happened that weren't necessarily my fault, but the way I responded was. And because we always have control over how we respond to different situations. And so I started thinking about it, and I was, reviewing like the things that I'd done in the past. Like I tried AA, I tried NA, I tried rehabs, I tried churches, I tried really decent girlfriends, living in different states. Like, I tried everything. And then this is the weirdest damn thing that happened. I guess it's the law of attraction, people call it. And I don't know if it's like the woo woo, like, the puppeteer pulling the strings or whatever, but it seems like things happen. And so I get off lockup, and I'm still trying to figure out, like, how am I going to do this? And I remember, like, I read a newspaper article about rational emotive therapy, and I can't remember the guy's name, but it was some psychologist in New York that was talking about, if you think things through to the end before you do anything, then a lot of times you can stop that behavior just by thinking it through. And so I'm starting to put together these different tools that I can use to maybe, build a toolkit that can help me to get my shit together. And then the life-changing event happened. I was on the tier, and there was a book laying on one of the tables, and it was called "You Can If You Think You Can." The author was Norman Vincent Peale, and I didn't realize it at the time, but he was also the author of a more famous book called "The Power of Positive Thinking." And so, I picked up the book and I looked at it and I thought, oh, I got plenty of time, and this looks like a pretty good book. So yeah, I'll read it. I mean, I got nothing to lose. I got everything to gain and nothing to lose. And so I started reading this book, and this author, he convinced me that I am the master of my life. I can control my life, and my life can turn out however I want, but I have to believe that I can do it first. And so what happened was the shift. It was in the middle of the book. I'm halfway through it, and I'm getting goosebumps right now just telling you this story. Like, I'm like, you know what? I'm done. And it was just like that. Like, just some switch went off, and I had a half pack of cigarettes you could smoke in jail back then, and I handed them to this guy, Frank. And I said, Frank, I quit smoking. Here you go. I had a couple cartons in my cell, and that's like money in jail. So I'm not giving those away, but I'm giving you the open ones. And I thought that I'm going to change my life, and I'm going to start by quitting smoking, just to prove to myself that I'm serious, and to show my family, like, I mean business. Like, I'm not playing. I'm done. And a few things happened during the next 4 years that I was locked up that were really good things. I mean, like, I saw prison as an opportunity. I saw prison as like, this is my rehab. And just because I have to do this time doesn't mean I have to waste it. I can get a lot out of this time.
We've heard that before. We've heard that from other people, and I think, yeah, it's valid. It's very valid.
It was a great opportunity for me, and that's how I saw it. This is an opportunity. And as it turns out, when I got all my sentences, for these different jurisdictions and all, it wound up to be 10 years and 9 months. And I ended up doing 4 years and 9 months on that 10-year, 9-month sentence. And but during the meantime, what I did was I started to realize that a lot of the reasons that I was like screwing up so much and making these bad decisions is because I just felt like, well, that's who I am. Like, I'm a loser, and I'm a bum. And like, that's what losers do. We make bad decisions. So I was giving myself permission to live like that. And what I did was I sat down in my cell, and I still remember this. I mean, I said, okay, I'm going to write down a list of all the good things that I've done in my life. It ain't going to be a big list, but I'm going to write that down, and I'm going to focus on that. I'm not going to focus about all my failures and losses and lies and all the terrible things I've done. I'm going to focus on the good. And so the first thing on the list was I quit smoking cigarettes. It was the first. And then it wasn't a lot, but it was like, I remember that time you helped that lady change a flat tire in the parking lot at the grocery store. It's like, that was a good thing to do. And then, so I had that list, and then I started to ask myself, what were, because you don't even know who you are. Like when you're coming out of this addiction, you're like, well, what do normal people do? Like, I don't even know what they do.
Right.
Because all that I know is like, getting high and drinking and having sex with people I don't know. And now it's like all of a sudden it's like, okay, you're not going to do any of that stuff. So now what? And so I thought, well, and what kind, and I don't even know, like, well, what kind of person are you? Like, because you've been doing all this, terrible things. Like, what kind of person are you? And I realized, I thought to myself, well, who were you before you started getting high? What were you like when you were 11? And I thought to myself, when I was 11, I was good. I was a good kid. I mean, I was like nice to people. I was polite. I was respectful. I used to go around, knocking on doors, collecting money for different charities, especially uh, what was the one, Jerry? You're,
Jerry's kids.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We used to go like knocking on doors for Jerry's kids to collect money, and
Yeah.
they drop that off at the high school. And didn't steal any money out of it for candy or anything. I probably thought about it, but I never did. And and I thought, well, that's who you really are. Like that person, that pre-drug addict person, that's you. That's your core. And I didn't. This isn't an excuse for anything, but I thought this person between then and now, that's that person under the influence of drugs. That's not who you are. That's that person under the influence of drugs. And you can take any wonderful person and put them in this life, and they're going to maybe respond the same way.
Yep.
And so I kind of began to feel different about myself. Instead of feeling like the bum, the loser, all these bad things about myself, I thought, you're a nice guy. You've done the best you could with the hands you've been dealt. I didn't meet my father until I was like 17 or 18 because he was like me and he was a druggie and just didn't care about me. And I just thought, like, that's not who I am. That's that he's got his own stuff. I met him a couple times since then. Actually, the last time I saw him, I stole his car. and he deserved it. And so anyway,
We won't go there, but you make such a good point in that you're focusing on who you really are, and that's not the drugs. And I know there's more to your story, and I want to hear more to your story. But that's a heavy duty takeaway message for anybody that's listening. Is that if you've got a loved one that's dealing with drug addiction, you're not dealing with the person that you know and love. You're dealing with the addiction. That's what's
right.
there.
That's it. And I didn't. I had to figure that out for myself because again, there was nobody there to guide me. And I think that again, we've come so far in our understanding of addiction over the last 20 or 30 years.
Yep.
And I'd already kind of burned my bridges with all the other stuff. And so what happened was, and I'm only speaking for myself when I say this, because I know that a lot of people don't like this part of my philosophy, but this only applies to me. It doesn't apply to anyone else. But with the AA and the NA and all that stuff, I've been to 2 AA meetings since I got out of prison. I got out of prison in June of 1994, and I went to 2 meetings, and it was really like I was going to just do the 12-step thing. Like I want to help other people, and I left both meetings in the middle because I realized I'm really not welcome here because I follow my own version of the 12 steps. And one of the things is for me, and again, this is just the way I saw things, is this addiction thing that I was handed, like these genes or whatever it is, like I didn't ask for this. This was the hand that I was dealt from the higher power. Like they gave me this. And when I do good, so the rooms say, well, if you do bad, it's your fault. If you do good, thank your higher power. And I reversed that. And I said, well, if the higher power is the one that gave me these bad genes, if I do good, I'm going to take credit for it because I'm the one that's doing the work to make these good things happen. I'm the one doing it alone. And so I'm going to give myself the credit. And when I give myself the credit, I feel better about myself. And when I feel better about myself, I'm able to do more good things. And so I turned everything backwards. And again, I'm going to go back even further. Like when I was trying to figure it out, I was looking on the outside for the answers. And when I figured it out, I figured out that the answers are on the inside. It's not
Right. Right.
And so the result of that is I get tingles just talking about it. I have not had the desire. I've never had to say, man, I'm not going to get high today. I'll do it. Like I've never, like the desire has been lifted off of me. And I know I can't do it. I know if I do, it's like Russian roulette, except there's like 5 bullets in one empty chamber. It's like, I
Right.
would, so it's like, why would you take that risk?
Exactly.
And I have no desire to get back to that. But I'm going to come to something that's a good thing. So about 6 months before I got out of prison, well, actually, when I first got locked up, and I was in the detention center, I wrote to that girl from high school, and I just wanted to let her know how things turned out. And she figured that's how it was. She saw like a wanted poster with a drawing, and the picture in the drawing looked like me, and she thought it was probably me. And so I just wanted to let her know how things turned out. And then about 6 months before I got out, I wrote her again to see how she had a boyfriend back then and all that stuff, and things were going well. And I was like extremely happy for her. Like she graduated from college, had an apartment, had a boyfriend, had a career, and I was in jail where I figured I'd be. She was where she thought she'd be, and I was where I thought I'd be. And and so anyway, I wrote her about 6 months before I got out, and I wanted to just set the story straight with her and just tell her the truth. But the first thing I did was I just wrote her a letter saying, hey, getting ready to get out. Hope all's well. Got my AA degree in prison. Quit smoking. Like, I actually got a bank loan when I was in jail. I had a job lined up before I got out. I'll tell you about the bank loan in a minute. It was a little awkward.
Yeah.
So I wrote her a letter, and she wrote me back, and she said, okay, well, that's good. I'm happy for you. So, by the way, don't write me anymore. And, I'll put this. I'm fairly creative with figuring out my ways around different problems.
I've noticed from your story.
So I thought, you know what? I'm going to write her one more letter. I'm going to tell her everything that I've always wanted to tell her and didn't have the balls to tell her. I'm going to tell her why I really broke up with her and how bad I feel about it, and that I'm happy how well she's doing. And so I sent that letter, and I think it took me 3 days to write it. I just wanted to make sure every word has a meaning to it. There's no fluff. This is like very woven together. And she wrote me back like maybe 2 weeks later. I got a letter from her, and she said, well, on second thought, we can continue to write. And then a couple months later, she came up to see me. A few months, she came up to see me a couple times, and then I got out of prison. I think it was June 6th of 1994. June 15th of 1996, we got married.
Wow. How
Still,
cool is that? Well done.
yeah, we're still married, and she's home now. So hope she doesn't hear all this.
She probably knows most of it.
Yeah, she does. And so I want to sum up with some of the good things that have happened at the time. So what happened was, I guess it was about 10 years ago. I felt a lot of guilt for many years about all the stuff that I'd done. It's really just terrible because I did it,
Right.
There's no way around that. I'm responsible for the drama and the trauma that I brought to so many people's lives. Whether I was under the influence or not, it was irrelevant. I did it. And I felt a tremendous amount of guilt for that. And so I looked up the cop that locked me up when he caught me in the stolen car, like that cop. I looked him up on Facebook, and I found him.
Oh my.
Yeah, it's about the same thing he said. So I sent him a message, and I said, excuse me, my name's Mark Owens. I think, used to work in Eastern District of Baltimore City Police. Yeah, I think you arrested me in September of 1989. Was that you? And he never responded. Of course he didn't. And I wrote him back I waited a couple weeks and then I wrote him back, sent him another message. And I said, oh, listen, I just want to let you know you saved my life. And I really appreciate it. And I just want you to know how sorry I am for all the shit that I did. And that I'm married. I've got a son. I've got a very successful business. Like my life is like going better than I could have ever imagined. And I just want you to know that I really appreciate it. And today we're friends. I've got his phone number in my phone. We talk on the phone occasionally. We met shortly after that and spent 3 hours standing in a parking lot talking.
Wow.
And then I went out. The Baltimore County detective that was looking for me, they didn't catch me. They were putting it all together. Like, who is this guy? It's like,
right.
Rocking all these damn stores and we can't catch him. And I don't want to mention his name on here, but I want to respect his privacy. But I looked him up on the internet and I found out that he's actually an attorney today. He was a robbery detective and now he's a private attorney. So I sent him an email and I said, hey, this is Mark Owens. You might remember me. And I said, I think I owe you a lunch, because they got me McDonald's when I was confessing to all this stuff. They went and got stuff at McDonald's. And we ended up meeting for lunch. I took him out to lunch and we talked and I just, told him how things turned out and that I'm really, I just wanted him to know that I was really sorry for the stuff that I did. Like, I really am sorry that I did that stuff. And then, it's 100% my responsibility. And of course, they don't hear a lot of, guys they locked up coming back to them and saying that stuff. But to me, it was just very important. And that's a rooms thing. That's like making amends. And I run my own version. I'm not following any steps, but I just go with my heart. It's like, I did some shitty things and I feel bad. And I want to apologize for the stuff that I did. And I think that, the apology will never take away the pain, but if people at least see that you're sincere and that you've turned your life around, it at least brings some happiness to them, to most of them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And not only does it help them, but it does so much to help you because you get to really take responsibility for your own life, for things that you did. And, I think I'm going to wax rhapsodic here for a minute, but I think that sometimes when someone is an addict and they continually relapse, I think there's so much guilt involved in that in terms of what they're doing to the people around them, that when you can come out the other end and take responsibility for some of that, I think it's unbelievably valuable.
It was for me. I mean, it's like today, I still feel bad about stuff, but I feel like I've been clean long enough and I've done more good than bad now. Like I've finally the scales have tilted and I got a call 2 weeks ago. Actually, it was a text message from a gentleman that I know a little bit, and he wanted to thank me because his 17-year-old son heard me speak somewhere and started following me, and that I've really made a major impact on his life.
Wow.
And this was about like a different, like my business stuff that I'm involved in, not necessarily addiction stuff, but it made a difference in his life. And then the same day I got a call from another person that just wanted to thank me for all the help that I've given them through like my different speaking things and just being open and transparent with how I run my business. So it was like two things in one day like that. And so for me, like when you're able, like with this podcast, if I can spend a couple of hours of my time is my most valuable asset.
Yeah.
But if I can spend a couple of hours of my time and possibly help somebody that I'll never meet, I'll never know, but just knowing that it might work, like somebody might watch this or listen to this and think about things in a slightly different way where it makes a significant difference in their life, like that's worth my time.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you having that viewpoint because I think that your story is so powerful and it's going to impact the lives of somebody that's going to listen. It's going to do that. And that's why we do what we do in the podcast. And I know that time is money for you. So you are a very successful real estate investor. Is that the right way to?
Yeah.
Yep. So I know that time is money and I really appreciate you not only spending the time with us, but being willing to be as candid with your story as you have, because we have spoken to former addicts who just really don't want to share that story in a public way. And I get it. I do. I understand it. But I also know that how powerful it is when someone like you does share your story. So I can't thank you enough for doing that.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, I just feel like being transparent, brutally honest, that's what makes the difference. This isn't like a canned presentation. This is just a conversation with you and I. And
I don't think you made any of that up. I'm just going to say that.
No. I would lie the other way and say, no, I didn't do that. So, but no, it's there's I mean that's the tip of the iceberg.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being willing to talk to us today. I really, really appreciate it.
Can I talk about one more thing real quick?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'd mentioned this bank loan thing when I was in jail.
Oh, yeah.
So I just want to kind of clarify that. So when I was in jail, I'd actually saved money. I was selling stuff. Like people send you money from the street, you buy a box of Little Debbie's and you lend them out 2 for $1 and all this stuff. And so I was able to actually save some money. So I had $500 sitting in my commissary account. And I asked my grandmother, I said, can you help me open a bank account? And she said, sure. So I sent her a money order. And I can't remember, everything was through the mail, but I ended up opening a bank account with the bank. And then I thought, okay, well now I want to borrow my $500 and it'll be a secure loan. So the bank has nothing to lose. They've already got my money. They're just lending my own money and I'm paying them interest for it. And so they agreed and they sent me my $500 back. And then I was sending them a money order every month for like $20 or whatever it was. My whole thought was, I'm going to start to establish credit. I've never had credit. It's like I spend all my utility bills on drugs. I spent all my rent money on drugs. I had no credit at all. And I was reading some books in prison about, getting your financial life together. And I thought, well, it's important to have credit. So I started that bank thing. And when I got out, I went and paid off the rest of the loan. And that's how I actually began to establish credit in prison. And that's what I mean. Like, just because you have to do the time doesn't mean you have to, you're not going to lose the time. You can still get so much out of it.
Well, you can choose. You can either choose to lose that time, or you can choose to make something out of it and make something out of yourself and learn from it and expand. We've had a couple people who've done that on the podcast, and that's a personal choice, just like you made.
Yep. So that's just another thing, just because, and the takeaway from that for people is it doesn't matter what your situation is. You can be in a bad situation, but there's always other stuff that you can do. It's how you respond to it. You can sit in the hospital or the prison or whatever, feeling sorry for yourself and beating yourself up, or you can say, okay, well, here I am, I'm stuck here. What can I do to improve my life?
Yep.
And if you can do that, then you can have an amazing life.
Yep. Absolutely. Thanks again, Mark. Awesome story.
Yeah, you're welcome, Joni.
Thank you for listening today. I know it was a long episode. I hope you stayed until the end. His story is unbelievable, and you have to be sure and hear the end. Of course, it's ridiculous for me to say that because it's the end now, but I'll try and put in the description that people should stay, or if nothing else, fast forward to the end of the story, because he has such good messages about, looking at the goodness that's within you. We all need to do that. It's very easy to do bad things and then get focused on the bad things and the guilt. And we forget to look at the good things, and we need to do that on a regular basis. Also, we have had many different people on this podcast who have their own way of getting clean and sober and staying clean and sober. And there is no one way for everyone. So find your way. That's my message to you. Find your way. And we'll be back again next week, and we will have another interview. And once again, thank you so much for listening.
You have been listening to the Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return, sponsored by Narconon Ojai. For more information on Narconon Ojai, call 866-231-5924 or visit www.narcononojai.org. Narconon is a non-12-step rehabilitation program based on the works of L. Ron Hubbard.